and you're going to wait for all the streaming to start. 1 second here. Sending data, sending data, sending data. 1, 2, 3. Come on, number 4. Come on, YouTube. Okay, good. Okay, let me start the music and we will get this party started here. Are you ready? I hope so. Here we go. Can you hear that, Jim?
I hear that.
So you want to be
So you want to be a cool kid. Hanging with the insect. Looking real. Cool and fun. Casting your net. Here comes the drum roll. Ready? Thank you very much to Serge Hoffman for singing the words and creating the music to my song, So You Want to Be. I'm Bonnie D. I'm here with cool dude number 28. My goodness, have I really had that many on the show? James M. James Mueller, Mueller. He's James M. And he told me that now that we're incredibly good friends, because we've been talking for 28 minutes, I can call him Jim. Jim, welcome. How are you?
Fine, Bonnie.
Nice to
Great
see
to be
you.
here.
Thank
Looking forward
you.
to it.
Yeah, you were a guest on my Read My Lips Cool Conversations with Creative shows a couple months ago, right?
There was.
Yeah. Did you have a good time talking about creativity?
Yeah, it was fun. Loved it.
Good. Okay. Man, a few words, and we have so much to learn about him. Jim, I have created an intro for you, and I hope you like it. So let me get started, and you can just smile and wave and whatever you want to do, okay? Here we go. So you may know us well, Bonnie D and James M, too. Seasoned in life, and we love what we do. From socials, channels, virtual embrace, we love sharing insights in this special savvy space. Here on We Dish, we're here to play, lightening up life in our uniquely fresh way. Welcoming James M, an artfully cool dude. Here's my rhyming intro. He'll add details with attitude. The story of James M, a Renaissance soul in motion. When Bonnie D welcomes James, we'll hear his heart's bold emotion. Here we go. Born in New York, where the skyline stands tall, James Mueller found his soul in an artist call. To Phillips Mill he moved as a boy, where actors and painters shaped his joy. James dreamed of Sioux life, bold and free, with war bonnets stitched from memory. A childhood spent crafting moccasin grace, drawing in class, lost in the sacred space. Psychology books became sketch pads instead, while native dreams danced through his head. Through college, though college tried to tame his flame, it crowned James later with art's acclaim. He hitchhiked west through forest and storm, lived in a teepee, a life far from norm. The army trained James for war and might, but he served with spirit, music, and with light. A master of canvas, he rose to fame. D.C. and Paris all praised his name. Ablum Palps, I hope I said that right, I found genius there, a Nixon portrait beyond compare. Yet acclaim alone could not fulfill, for the novel in him had stronger will. So off James went to Rainbow's Bend to write and live with truth as his friend. The Confessions of St. Augustine, his book took flight, with satire, soul, and art in sight. 3 volumes deep, both raw and vast, a mirror to America's fractured past. Now at Mill Verde, James' spirit finds rest, with Apache kin where dreams feel blessed. He reads, he paints, he lifts, he learns, and still that inner fire burns. James Mueller lives where art meets prayer, and story and canvas both lay bare. He's not just a man, but a legend in kind, a cool dude of vision, fearless of mind. What'd you think?
That's incredible. Wow. I'm amazed.
Let me finish up now. Here we're here on We
In
Dish.
the lip books, right
We're here
before
on.
T.S. Eliot.
There you go. We're here on We Dish, chatting on life's score, culture, music, food, and oh so much more. Join us live or on demand, day or night. Enjoy our dishing with shared delight. Meet us for real in our live streaming glow. Your comments are welcome. Just play nice. We know who you are. We know. We Dish, 2 saucy dame and cool dude too, Bonnie D and Jim M, dishing on life's fun. Pour vu. There you go. What do you think?
Fantastic. You're incredible.
I'm glad. I'm
Very
very, very
creative.
good. I know we
I'm
have
in
to do it.
awe.
Well, Oz, good. We have a shout out to do to. We have your lovely and beautiful and helpful daughters, Lizette and Allie, are there somewhere in the background. I'm waving hello to them. And we met a while ago, and most recently again through Grace McCormick from Lightfinder PR, who did a reintroduction. So a shout out to Grace and all of the ladies around you. So, would you like to tell us a little bit about anything I missed, Jim, in the bio I did for you? Is there anything important any facts you want to add here?
Read the book. Too
Read
much
the
to say. It
book.
happens
Tell-
to be a trilogy, 700 pages long, with lots of pictures. So that'll clue you in a lot better than I could do in the time we have. So
Can you tell us a little bit about what's the book about? Confessions of St. Augustine. What's the premise?
where do I even start? Well, the obvious would be St. Augustine. However, it's a modern day tale, sort of an intellectually hip bad boy. Um, but the titles of the different novels are sort of an indication. Um, it's too involved to get into. Let me put it this way. If you've read Catch in the Rye, Portnoy's Complaint, Catch 22, that will give you a clue. A matter of fact, if you don't like any one of those three, don't even get into my novel. But ever if you have that certain sardonic attitude, then this is your, you know,
This is it.
let's say.
This is it. Question
There's
for
a lot of
you.
irony, a lot of counterpoint. The art is no clue to the dialogue itself. Matter of fact, people that have read the book and look at the art are just told it blows their mind. They expect a Jackson Pollock in terms of my writing style as opposed to my actual paintings. You know who Jackson Pollock is, right? Jack the Dripper.
Mm-hmm.
That
Sure.
kind of wild, abstract expressionism is more akin to the way I write. However, the painting is just more or less the opposite. It's counterpoint throughout.
Well,
I hesitate to even get into it.
we're going to be showing some of your art on your website in a few
Okay.
minutes, so people will get an idea of what you're talking about. I asked you to pick a couple of cool dude songs. I have no idea. Some favorites, something that influenced you, something that you experienced, parts of your life related in song. So you want to tell me a couple of songs, please, Jim?
All right, you said three between 3 and 5, and I realized you
Sure.
wanted three. Now the problem was that are so many, and you said pick three relate to your work and so forth. So
Hmm.
these three are not indicative of the way I work. The way I work, they're very phonetic. I like wild. Well, let me just run by the ones I was thinking of, but they're not the ones I'm going to concentrate on. For
Okay.
example, let's see. California Dreaming, Johnny Be Good, Great Balls of Fire, Green Sleeves, Tutti Frutti, Blowing in the Wind. Sweet dreams are made of this. Those were the days, my friend. Sounds of silence. This land is your land. House in New Orleans. Sing, sing, sing. Which isn't a song, but it's one of my favorites with Gene Krupa and Benny Goodman at the
Yes.
Carnegie and all the rest of the boys. Were when I first used to listen to it in high school, it was on a 45. I'd come home, I'd be dancing to the music. Halfway through, you'd have to turn the record over in the middle of Harry James doing his thing, before you got to Gene Krupa. Anyway, that's one of my favorites too, but it's not actually a song. Whole lot of shaking. If I had a hammer, Lord's Prayer with Mary Alonzo. He's got everyone singing it. Long Cold Woman in a Black Dress. Paxos of Plenty. Odetta. Pocket for Forsaken. Michael Hurley, who was in my book, by the way, who was a somewhat famous folk singer back in Greenwich Village, back with Bob Dylan together. And his song, by the way, is on Deadwood. If you want to ever get the theme song, he sang it. Where have all the flowers gone? Midnight Special. These are the ones I picked for the 5. California Dreaming, This Land is Your Land, Green Sleeves, Home in the Meadow version, Shenandoah, and I'm Bound for the Promised Land. The versions from How the West Was Won by Alpha Newman. Now I did pick 3, so I picked these 3. This Land is Your Land, Shenandoah, and I'm Bound for the Promised Land. Because they fit in with the title and the theme of my book. I've hitchhiked all over the country, and I mean all over the country, had different jobs. You name it, I've done it. So I relate to that, and part of the book is premised on that going west young man kind of thing. Shenandoah, Across the Wide Missouri. That
Hmm.
was a movie back in my youth that really influenced me with Clark Gable. He was
Yep.
a trapper way out for the Blackfeet Indians before the rest of the guys got there. But it was a major theme of my book because it was also a major theme of my life. When I went to live with the Sioux Indians, I went to the small reservation in Greenwood, South Dakota, called the Yankton Sioux. and it was right in the Missouri when it was wide. And I swam across it, and about halfway across, I wasn't sure I was going to make it. Well, I finally made it, and all of a sudden I heard all this noise from the other side. And it was lined with Indians who were all cheering the fact that I made it. So that was sort of like my intro into the Road of the Sioux. Then I went upriver to the Standing Rock Reservation, which is a big reservation on the Sioux. They had that big protest a few years back. Well, anyway, my end there was the fact that I swam across the river. I took on their martial arts expert. He was the big honcho and best out of three. I took him down all three times. So from that point on, I had in with the Indians. Plus, back then, I spent more time in the sun. I was dark. I looked like an Indian. So I lived with him for quite a while, and that was a highlight of my youth. So that's why I picked that song. Shenandoah, across Ohio, Missouri. Okay. And the last one was I'm Bound for the Promised Land, which is a major theme in my book on every level, physical, metaphysical, and so forth. So to tell you what the book's about is very difficult to nail it down to any one thing since it deals with a lot of things. But those songs sort of encapsulate the major themes of the book. But the ones I listed before capture the tempo, the music, the poetry, and the whole emotion. So
Jim, of all of the
I
guests
helped it out.
all of the guests I've had on Cool Dude, I've never had anybody rattle off a list of 100 songs. Well, it felt like 100. Your songs are,
I got more than that.
I know those
I didn't
songs.
get me going, but
Jim,
yeah,
I know those songs. Every time you read a title, my brain is going, yes, I'm
right.
hearing the song. I'm hearing the singer. I'm seeing,
But
yes,
see,
yes, yes.
I'm here
Unbelievable.
when I'm writing. This is the way I write.
Yep.
It's very driven. It's like you're on speed.
I like it.
In fact, if you were to take, I know you're going to ask me later on people you'd pick, but Robin Williams would have been one of them. He's about the only person who could read my second chapter and perform all the antics I go through verbally.
I like the energy.
Picture Robin Williams on speed. I know.
That's hard to imagine.
That kind of character you start out with.
That is hard to imagine.
The first book, The Mendicant, is broken into three parts. First part is called Portrait of an American Wise Guy. So that sort of clues you in, but it essentially just speeds up even more and more and eventually crashes. So to explain all this, one, overall trilogy, almost impossible.
Okay. Well, you gave us some clues. You dropped some hints. Thank you very much. I loved your songs, by the way. I love the ones you picked. And we're going to talk in a second about Greenwich Village in a minute. Would you like to hear my song picks for me?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay. I have a whole bunch, and I will give them with the name of the performer. Okay. Girls Just Want to Have Fun by Cyndi Lauper. Groovin' by the Young Rascals. Hit Me With Your Best Shot, Pat Benatar. Respect, Aretha Franklin, R-E-S-P-E-C-T.
Yep.
I Will Survive by Gloria Gaynor. New Attitude by Patti LaBelle. New Attitude. Dancing Queen by ABBA, because I used to teach. Happy Dance by Mercy Me, wonderful song. I Feel Better When I'm Dancing, a very new one by Meghan Trainor. And the line is, show the world what you can do. Prove to them you've got the moves. I don't know about you, but I feel better when I'm dancing. Yeah, yeah. That's not the tune, but that's how I sing it. I've Had the Time of My Life by Bill Medley in Dirty Dancing. We all know that. Bill Medley of, yes. And let's see, a couple more here. You Don't Own Me by Leslie Gore. I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar by Helen Reddy. Me and Bobby McGee. 1971, Janis Joplin, Freedom's Just Another Word for Nothing Left to Lose. Hello, welcome to my world. And then I used to teach disco in addition to Latin and swing and line dances. And Donna Summer was one of my favorites back in the day. She's gone, which is sad for me. She was part of the era of the disco era. And I looked through her discography, they call it, Jim, and I put together a list of her songs that are almost my life story. She Works Hard for the Money.
Love it.
Hot Stuff, although I'm not a streetwalker in LA, but I've been called Hot Stuff. On the Radio, I've been doing that for 25 years. No More Tears, Enough is Enough, which was a duet. Last Dance, Last Chance for Love. I Feel Love, which was Giorgio Moroder with that machine, that ba 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 in the background. And Heaven Knows from the MacArthur Park Suite. So those are my songs. What do you think?
I love them. Yeah.
Thank you.
MacArthur Park Suite. That's the one where Richard Harris sings. That's the one.
Well, this was Donna Summer's cover of MacArthur Park Suite with
I made
her
reference
singing.
to that song, by the way, in my novel.
Heaven knows I did. I entered a Disco Hawaii dance contest with my partner
Mhm.
Michael in Oregon, Eugene, Oregon, many years ago, and we danced to Heaven Knows, and that was our theme song for our. And we came in third in a Disco Hawaii. No, we didn't win the Hawaii trip, but anyway, those were the days. So we had a lot of fun doing that. So I would like to go to your art, and I'm going to share your website, which I have up here. Let me go get screenshot and get, this is going to take a second here to bring it up and it's on my other screen and let's go to here you are. So I'm on your website. Can you see this, Jim?
I can see it, yeah.
Okay, so you want me to go back to the home page?
No, no,
This,
you start with
this
that.
is,
If
okay,
you want to talk about just paintings, let's stick with the paintings.
let's stick with the paintings. Okay, so I'm going to
The
art.
other is
So
too confusing. Go to
why
the
do you,
first one, that Main Street right there. Most of
I-
these paintings have a story behind them too, 'cause they weren't just, you know,
Monday Morning, iconic Main Street
Monday
America of
morning.
the late 1970s and introduces the second section of the first trilogy, The Mendicant. I can read a little bit. Go ahead. So they all have a story that pops up.
Right. Can
I've
you
never
zero in any one picture? You just have to show them all together.
I've never seen a website like this. So why don't you tell us about some of who these people are and
Okay,
where you were?
you can't zero in on that one picture.
Which one do you want? This one?
Yeah, that one right there, the Main Street.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay, cool. I picked that because it's Main Street America, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But it was actually Homestead, Florida, where we lived at the time. We lived in Miami. And I used to teach at a snooty little private school in Coconut Grove, which is, by the way, ranked as #2 best private school in the country. And we had all these child prodigies that would go to Yale, Harvard, Princeton, full scholarship, they'd skip grades and so forth. But down below us is this redneck town called Homestead.
Hmm.
It was, to me, Main Street, USA. So I had to paint it. And I painted it exactly the way it was at that time, 1979. So that's one of my favorites, actually. And I spent about 5 weeks doing it. I hated doing it. It was the most boring picture of a paint of my life, but it's the most inspiring picture. But behind any picture, it takes a lot of sweat and tears. And this one in particular, some came like this. Some I did in a few hours, but this one was probably the most, I won't say difficult, just time consuming and boring because of all these cars and detail.
Jim,
What you
what media did you paint in? What medium?
pastel. It's what you
Pastel.
call super realism, photorealism, hyperrealism.
It looks like a photo.
I know. Well, actually, this is a poor rendition of the actual painting.
I know. I know.
It's been translated about 3 or 4 times down the road. The actual painting is far, more realistic. But anyway, that was one of
Wow.
my favorite.
Wow. Wow. Let's go to
I know.
pick another one and I'll highlight it. Which one do
That
you
one
like?
right there, the railroad crossing. That was right around the
This
corner.
this one?
And
Which
this
one?
one. This one.
Am I in the middle there?
Oh, I think so. You don't see what I'm pointing.
I can't
The
see where you're
one on the
pointing.
far right in the top.
There
We'll
we
get to,
go.
that's
There we
the one.
go. Okay.
Yeah, that's the railroad
Yeah.
crossing in Homestead too. The
Oh,
only thing I changed was the background had buildings. I wanted it to look more Western. So there's no elevation in Florida, at least where I lived. And I put a little elevation so there's the mystery of the great beyond when you get outside of town in the great flyover, which, to us is the Midwest, whatever. Anything goes west of the Hudson and east of LA is to us the great flyover. So I was trying to capture that feeling of vastness. The only change made was, I realize you don't see where I'm pointing. What would be the right-hand corner? But other than that, it was just the way it was.
right
Including
here,
the cars.
the right-hand corner on my side. Am I?
Yeah, right on the right of the building, but no big deal.
Okay.
So let's go to the one in the middle. You're inside of a teepee looking out. I was at a powwow with a friend of mine.
Wow.
Again, everything was just about the way it was, except for the terrain. It was basically flat and wasn't a suggestion of a hill behind it. And he actually had that Coors beer cup in the foreground. Now that was interesting because, in a sense, I hate to, well, okay, the downfall I think is pretty obvious that drink, and in this case, you had everything that was smacks of the past except for the Coors, which is the archetypal iconic
It's,
Western beer, but
I see it.
even now it's a plastic cup as opposed to the actual can. In the background, you see teepees, which were actually there. Well, the photograph is poor, but it's a pickup truck over there. And these are Indian women by a teepee with an umbrella with a hat.
Mm-hmm. I
That
see
was
them right here in
basically,
the middle. I see
yeah,
them.
okay, that's it, right. That's as it was, with the exception of the right-hand side of the painting. it wasn't like a hill dropping off. I wanted a mystery of what's beyond that. Because I had lived with a Sioux that was a typical teepee of the Sioux Indians, and I had lived in a teepee very much akin to that. Some of these items were iconic, like the furniture, they call it parfleche in the middle there where they keep their stuff. There's the lantern, and that thing on the left-hand side was like a backrest. That was like more of their lounge chair. And that brown-looking stuff in the middle, that was actually a buffalo hide, which of course, and that was their way of life.
Mm.
They would roll up the side of the teepee in the summer to get the breeze inside. And the fact you had a fireplace in the middle and with these vents at the top, it was a very comfortable way to live. And that's why I had basically lived that way my last semester of college, because I ran away from home. Now I'd fit the bills. I couldn't afford anything. I could hardly eat more than maybe one meal a day. So I reverted to my teepee, not out of basic necessity. So that's how I survived the Massachusetts winter just to graduate. So I can experience that they
Jim,
wake
what medium did you use for this stunning painting?
pastel. Everything I did is pastel.
This is pastel.
Yep.
And how do you preserve the pastel? I'm asking a very
That's the
naive
thing people don't
question.
realize. Now, okay, other than contact, you make sure there's a separation between the painting and the glass. The color
Okay,
painting, for lack of a better word,
got
since
it.
drawing doesn't quite, describe all that goes into it. But you have to separate it, make sure it never touches, because once it
Hmm.
picks up the chalk, unless you spray
Yes.
it, which once you spray it, that dissolves the detail, changes the color. So you have to make sure that the one thing that does preserve is it doesn't fade. When I was in the Louvre, my Paris show, they had pastels that were done about 400 years ago, and they look like they were done today. And you look at the oil paintings, they look anything over 50 years, they have that mustard color. They're all faded looking, so it makes a big difference. I see you're going down.
Yes. Pick one. Pick another one. We'll do one more.
Go further up. Get the one of Will Sampson. Go to the top.
This one here on the
Go
right.
down further. Let's get
Wise
Will.
guy,
No, that's the cover, one of the cover of the
California
book. The
Dreaming.
girl in the car is in the book. This girl, go to the very bottom. Let's pick Will Sampson. I met, that's it. Zoom in to Will.
Yep, got it.
Yeah, pick him up. I met Will Sampson shortly after he had done Cuckoo's Nest, to recall One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I taught the book before the movie came out, so all my students were looking forward to the movie. We were all rooting for Academy Awards, and they won the Big Five. There were the only three movies that won the Big Five. It happened one night, was the first one in 34. Silence of the Lambs was the last one, and Cuckoo's Nest won the Big Five, which, best producer, director, screenplay, actor, blah, 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 actress. He was up for, I think, best supporting, whatever. I met him 2 years later in 79 at a powwow down in Florida in the Miccosukee Indian Reservation. And we're sitting on a picnic table with Coke bottles around him and and cheeky huts in the background of palm trees. And that's not going to fly because he's from Oklahoma. So other than himself in that position, everything was changed. It wasn't a picnic table. I put him on a fence. I made up the fence. I made up the background. But I liked it because of the fact I met the man. I was impressed by the man. I was impressed by the roles that he's played and the theme of the book, Cuckoo's Nest. So that was a part of my book too, in terms of the thinking to freedom, that in the book, he himself finally realized Jack did not. He was sort of like the sacrificial lamb for their freedom, because after he was lobotomized, from that point on, they all started to leave one by one. So anyway, that's the story behind Will. So you can go
Wow.
back
And
up now.
this is pastels too?
Pastel, yeah.
I'm absolutely amazed. Amazed. And there you are, accomplished author, fine artist known for his book Confessions of St. Augustine.
Go for this one right here. That's more comical in my mind. I don't think it's seriously. Oh, the guy,
Where
the
do you
very
want me to
bottom,
go?
very bottom. Go to the bottom.
Bottom? Okay.
Those guys, the Indians, blow it up. Okay, I was commissioned to pay New York State Indians for Robert Abplanalp. That was a guy name you try to pronounce. He was
Mm-hmm.
Nixon's buddy. And
Yes.
he wasn't involved in Watergate, but he said no reason why they never got me is because they could never pronounce my name. So anyway, he was the guy with the money. He was one of the richest guys in probably the world at that time. And that was one of his hobbies. I mean, he owned everything. He owned fishing places in the Caribbean, which he had me paint later on, but he commissioned me for a year and a half to paint Indians in historical perspective. Now, at that time, there was no Indian would have shaved his head for any amount of money. They had long hair. So guess who has to shave their head? That's back when I actually had hair. So I posed for every one of those, but I had to cover my tracks by changing myself in every one. And I thought I did. I thought I covered my tracks. So the opening of the big show, we had maybe 24 pictures. My mother walks in and takes one look and said, "The cloning of Jimmy Mueller."
See it
He
here.
spotted me in every one of these pictures and knows me. So, it didn't work for her, but everyone else said, "Oh, wow, where'd you get these guys?" Well,
I can see
close.
them. I
I
can
had to
see
cover
the
the
face.
tracks.
I'm looking at the
In
duplicated
fact,
faces.
in my book at the very end, we got the glam shot of the author.
Yeah.
He had this hokey hat on, long mustache, and sunglasses. Intentionally said he wouldn't pick out me with all these pictures where I posed for.
So this is
Look at
you and you and you and
every
you
last
and
one of them.
you. I've got 5, 6, 7. Some of them are a little bit different.
Oh
8,
yeah, well, I try to
9.
change them so they wouldn't recognize. Probably the
Yeah.
closest were the two in the middle, one guy sitting and one guy above him.
Yeah.
But
I see those. Those are the only two who are really
right, yeah,
Are you clever?
yeah.
This is great. Is there any more on the website you want to show as long as we're here?
Well, yeah, if you have the time, yeah. Let's see.
What should we
Go
do?
down more. Go down more. Pick this. Get the one in the middle. Keep going.
This is all that we have here.
No, no, but go up. Go up.
Go
Go up.
up. Okay.
Go up.
Describe it to me.
It's a girl. Okay, stop. The girl with the house in the background with the hands on the hips with the bouffant hairdo.
Got it.
Yeah, okay, blow up on that one. I did a series called the Great American Woman series. It's sort of tongue in cheek.
Hmm.
One of the person sort of represented the middle America ideal that every guy wants to marry, Peggy Sue kind of girl,
Hmm.
but facetiously tongue in cheek, Great American Woman, because you can read it into a lot of these different pictures. I had cowboy playing baseball and so forth. But this is, to me, when I didn't pick up on the subliminal, subconscious thing behind it. Someone said one day, he says, that is like an invented Christina's World. Remember Christina's World by Wyatt?
Hmm. Hmm.
The difference is the grass is brown, the house is on the other side, and it's all weather beaten. The girl is lying in the grass. She's an invalid looking up at the house. And all
Hmm.
of a sudden, someone said, well, it's just the opposite. She's facing the other way. The house is vibrant. The grass is green. She's too big for the picture even. Actually, she commands the picture. In fact, I intentionally cut her off the top. It's almost though the picture can't contain her.
Mm.
That's
Interesting.
also in the cover, but it was also sort of emblematic of one of the themes I was trying to capture
And
with
did
the American
somebody
theme.
is this a real woman? Did she pose for you
Yeah,
or did she did?
yeah.
Okay.
He posts a lot of pictures.
Beautiful. Wow. I love the fact that you mentioned that you cut off the top on purpose, that
Yeah,
she
and I
was
was toying
too
with that,
big.
like, okay, where do I crop this one? So I always had a tough time. And the actual painting I was never quite satisfied. For the book, it worked because when I have it in the book, it actually works for the text. Because it was very important the text works for the picture. They weren't just slapped in there. They were sort of like counterpoint, very often ironic. What you saw was what you're getting when you read it. It was very sarcastic in terms of what. In fact, he never believed he was a good painter. No, he knew he was a good painter in terms of virtuosity, but in terms of his vision, he was never quite sure because he just did what he wanted to do. He wasn't playing the New York game because back then, Bonnie, to make it in New York, you had to be an abstract expressionist.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that is anything goes. You can really con people and say, "Well, this is great." I mean, look at Jackson Pollock. Well, how many Jackson Pollock clones have you seen since then? Anybody could have gotten a bucket of paint and splashed it on the wall and say, "Whoa, look at this, man." So that was one of the catches. So I personally prefer the more realistic. Not always. In fact, my favorite painter is Charles Birchfield, who is sort of a mix. No one knows who he is. Wyatt was not one of my favorites, by the way. But so anyway, that's sort of the background.
Beautiful.
Let's see
I
what
want to
else.
go to one more.
I'll
I'm
pick
interested.
whatever you want.
Morning water. Tell me about this one. This looks like
Okay.
it was very hard to do. You've got the
Yeah.
shadow reflection in the water. You've got the deer prancing. You've got the
All
woman
right.
with the jug turning to look. You've
Oh,
got the
guess who
stones.
posed for that? Guess who posed for that too?
Same woman.
Nope, me.
What you?
I did, yeah. I have a good imagination. I wasn't wearing a dress, but the body, to get a person even dressed, you sort of have to picture how they look in terms of the basic body. So yeah, I haven't posted that. And it was contrast with another one. One was called The Hunter and the Hunted, and this one is called Morning Water, but they sort of are the opposite themes. In fact, pull it back so I can show the other one to contrast.
What do you want me to go back?
Yeah, get the overall. Okay, this one over here in the middle, just to her right. Pick that one out.
This
That was
one?
The Hunter and the Hunted. Not just the opposite. Now you've got the predator.
Hmm.
Which one is? Which is the hunter and which is the hunted?
Yes.
So I used to hang those pictures together so you contrasted the two. One's a threat, one's peaceful. So they were both done at the same time, by the way.
And I just
Also,
realized that you've
they're
got
both
the
done for Bob Applehoff's commission of the New York State. New York State Indians was the commission I had, and New York State Indians all shaved their heads, so that's why I had to shave my head.
there you go. I just realized that
This
there's
in
this
longhouses too, by the way.
forward and backwards arrows. I just saw them on the screen. Did you post
Yeah,
for this one, Bahama?
I did. Yep. That was one of his islands. He owned a lot of he owned a bunch of islands in the Caribbean. And he waits till I move out west, then he wants me to fly back east to go to his islands to get inspired. So those were the results of my inspired islands, which all of which he owned. That's a guy I had met down in Florida, but that was for the commission for the New York State Indians. The only ones who did not shave their head were non-combatants or medicine man, shave man, call them whatever you want.
Mm-hmm. Oh, my goodness gracious.
That's that one I did. It's ironic. That one I cranked out in probably about a half an hour, and it sold for about $4,000 in Paris, which is back in 1988. You
What's
know,
it going for
here I
now?
spent here I spent 5 weeks on a painting. Back then I couldn't sell for $2,500, and here's one I spent about a half hour on. It sells for about 10 times that. Talk about the irony.
This is
Now
gorgeous.
I know those paintings would sell for more now, but at the time when you're desperate.
Jim,
So
how big was this painting in real life?
actually, it was very small. It's probably about um, foot and a half by a foot. Very small
So
picture.
12 by 18. Okay.
Yeah, most of my portraits were life size though,
Wow.
except when you get a group picture, that's different. Although
Sure.
in some cases I've been commissioned to paint huge life size. That's my hometown, by the way, where I live now. The one you,
Okay. Look at this.
yeah,
Also
that's right up here where we live, where my girls live. That's
pastels.
where the San Francisco Peaks are.
You are one talented, cool
They
dude.
used that for the poster in Paris, by the way. They plastered those posters all over the city
Sure.
of Paris.
Sure. Oh my goodness. Oh,
That blue car, I spent years looking for that perfect car.
hmm.
Every time they'd be going the other way, and I would make a quick U to try to catch up and never catch them. Finally, I found that car. So that's what I had in mind. I wanted that 50 Ford or 54. I'm not quite sure. But I had to get that blue Ford convertible. So
Mm-hmm.
long
That
time.
I love the way the railroad tracks converge to almost a point at the end. Almost. There's
Yeah.
just a little bit of future going. There's a little dark right there in the middle. It's not a perfect point, but wow. That's some perspective. Let's just finish going through this. Who is these?
That's the
Just
first picture that you see where the narration starts. He's half crocked anyway. We're not quite sure what he's on. Probably speed, but it's never clarified. And we're not sure if he's rolling a joint or it's a pastel. You can up to your imagination. But that's where the story starts. And it gets into a party scene, which would be like um, well, if you've ever seen the movie Babylon,
no.
the music, that's the way his mind is working, but not in terms of the actual. Anyway, that's the
Very,
first picture.
very pensive. Who's this? Not the same man.
Same guy,
Oh,
but
wise guy.
I had in mind for the cover of the original book, but I wanted more in the long run. But that was the first picture I had in mind for the actual book, which is
Stunning.
called Portrait of an American Wise Guy. At the
Stunning.
time, I used myself sort of, and I used a friend sort of, and I just had to spend time in my imagination coming up with the image that I wanted. So it was a lot of different guys going through my head, like Brando and Newman,
Mm-hmm. I see a
James
little Brando
Dean.
in him. I see some Brando in that
I
face.
used myself, he was my friend, and I didn't want him too buff. I wanted him to have an attitude and with a
Oh,
cigarette,
he's
and
got attitude, that's for
definitely
sure.
attitude in the background, and had to have the Ford car.
I
Uh,
love the fact that the hair's not perfect, that it's
yep,
flying a little bit in the wind. That tells
yeah.
me he's cool and he's moving, he's traveling.
It's sort of the picture you'd see in a cover of a book.
Yep.
A little idealized.
And
And that's
who's
the girl. I
this?
used this girl a lot too. In fact, I used it a lot of times. She was actually a Miccosukee Indian, but I didn't want her looking like a Miccosukee. I wanted her to look maybe Semitic, Tex-Mex, who knows, up for grabs. But she's a major character in the initial part of the novel. And that's the Ford that I talked about, the old Ford with the two windows on the side. That took a
Mm-hmm.
long time too. Because that was just my imagination. You asked in the last interview about do I write from the inside out or the outside in? Remember that question you had?
Mm-hmm.
In your
Mm-hmm.
pants? Well, I work from the inside out, but
Okay.
sometimes it's a mix. She's the same girl again.
Same girl, I see. Stunning. I love the
And
light on the face. I like the way you captured the
yeah,
light from the brow
very
to
one
the
of the few
nose to the cheek.
smiling.
Yep.
People always say, why don't they ever smile? Well, they have nothing to smile about when
They're smiling. And here
when
we're
they
back to
do.
our,
That's another one I did, that girl, the Great American Woman series.
yep.
Yeah,
Oh, this is interesting.
that's me again, and that's a girl again. It's called Departure. In this corner here, that was just because the photographs were mixed together. It's not actually part of the original painting, but
Beautiful.
and that's the same girl again.
This is dreamy. This is just
Yeah.
ethereally dreamy. You can see you just sitting quietly in nature, thinking and dreaming and wondering what she's thinking about. I guess,
It's part of the New York series anyway. Uh, their beadwork is what they call floral beadwork, as opposed to more geometrical that you see in the Plains Indians.
mm-hmm. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Same
Same,
girl again.
same girl. That's
Adirondacks Mountains,
stunning.
which you must have, of
And
course.
more
What we
beadwork.
call
There's
the
the,
Jewish Alps down in the Catskills, remember?
there you go.
Jewish
Sure.
Belt, all the comedians, Penny Young.
Sure. That was the Borscht Belt, right? Borscht Belt.
That's
Yep.
further up in the Adirondacks.
Yep.
That's Ma again. I use myself. This guy is an actual historical figure named Joseph Brand. He was the Renaissance man of the Mohawk. In fact, he was lionized by the British when he went over there. He translated the Gospel of John into Mohawk. He was married to a woman named Savannah. And I used the same Indian girl again, but again, I couldn't find anybody to pose because none of them would shave their head. So based on the paintings I had of Joseph Brandt and my similarity somewhat, I used myself again for that particular.
Stunning. We looked at this, the prayer. Yep. I think we've seen just about all.
Yeah, okay, and
I
that
think we've
black guy was a guy I met down in the islands too.
I think we've seen these all. Well,
Okay.
this was quite an adventure,
Yeah.
sir. Absolutely beautiful. Wow,
Oh, there you are. I can paint you now, Bonnie.
oh,
All
well,
right, I'm
I would be
inspired. I haven't
beyond.
done a redhead before.
Oh, you haven't, huh? Well,
No, I haven't get out the old pastels.
we'll have to talk.
In
Oh,
my, in
we
my
will,
red ones in particular.
we'll talk about that. I would be very, very honored. I'm not going to show any of my art because you're in a league of world class and mine is just dabbling. I'll show it to you privately later, but not on the
Okay.
show right now. So that was very interesting. Thank you. So let's do a couple of off the top questions here. Okay, Mr. Powerful Writer, Powerful Thinker, Powerful Artist, Jim. How do you start your day? Is there a drink? Is there a food? What gets you going? What powers you for the day?
Man.
What do you
I
got?
the same thing every day, Bonnie. It's very
Yep.
boring. Oatmeal, all right. The regular stuff. I love shredded wheat. In fact, there's a story behind that. I got going on Indians because way back when I was a kid, they had no TV, they had a radio program called Straight Arrow, and their cereal was shredded wheat. And between the biscuits, there were what they call ingenuity cards, and you could make Indian stuff based on these cards. And he had a radio show, Straight Arrow. So I started listening to the radio show. I bought shredded wheat and so forth. I won't get into all the different things that went into that, but that's got my interest in Indians. But the actual shredded wheat is pure wheat, nothing else, no sugar, no salt.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I get the biscuits now, mix it with my oatmeal,
Mm-hmm.
bananas in it. I put protein powder. I put milk powder and milk, skim, and I put them in. I used to put in nuts and blueberries. I say that little, but that's what gets me going. But it's a huge bowl. And 2 hours after that, I work out like a madman for about 2 hours. Weights, upper body, lower body. I do
Wow.
aerobics for sometimes an hour, 2 hours. By the time I'm finished, that huge bowl is all, burnt out and I'm starving for lunch. And my daughter Allie's the same way. we finish one meal, we're thinking of the next meal because, we're so driven physically. So anyway, that's how I start out my day.
Well,
I'm awake, so I'm full of energy.
I have something similar, but on a much smaller scale. I have an individual blender, the kind you hit the pulse button. It
Yeah,
doesn't
I don't
turn
do
on
that.
or what. And
I
I
just
put
go.
in about 6 ounces of 1% milk, and I will add in a handful of frozen sliced unsweetened strawberries and a squirt of raw agave syrup instead of sugar. And then I will add a banana. If it's small, I'll add a whole banana. If it's large, I'll add a half a banana. And then what else do I put in? I don't put ice in. That's what the frozen strawberries are for. Sometimes I put a couple taps of unsweetened cocoa powder, like Hershey's or Nestle's, just to give it a chocolate strawberry banana flavor.
Very
And I'll
good.
pulse that for about 3 minutes. And then I have a reusable straw and I drink it right out of the container through the straw, take the top off, and I'll drink that at my desk. And that's what gets me going every morning. That's my favorite.
Wow.
Not boring at all. So I've got the same banana. You've got the blueberries. I've got the strawberries. And I'm not working out and bench pressing for 2 hours, but I'm pressing my mouse. This is a very important work here. I'm pressing the mouse across my desk. So I have to be very powerful, Jim. I got you to laugh. There you go. Let's do another question
You make
here.
me laugh. I
If
enjoy it. That's a
you
good.
could be a superhero, who would you be and why? What would you do with that superpower? What do you think?
I was never into those guys. I always wanted to be an Indian and it had to fit into at least a world that could be real. And I realized, it's all a myth about the Great American West. It wasn't the way we think it was. But yeah, that's a tough one. I was thinking you asked me something like, in fact, you did. You asked me about if they were to make a movie about you, who would
Oh,
you
I
pick?
didn't get to that one yet. Let's not do that
Okay,
one yet.
that's
Let's not
another
do
one,
that
huh?
one yet. But all right, so I tell you what.
I want
Let's
to be an Indian.
let's let me.
I want to be a Sioux Indian. I want to be Crazy Horse. Okay,
Okay, crazy horse.
I'd love to be
But
Crazy
if
Horse.
I switch that up, I think we already know the answer to what I'm going to ask you. What's your creativity superpower? And I think it's to be able to visualize, to take your chalks, to turn them into magnificent portraits and scenics that express a depth of feeling, a depth of history, a depth of humanity. Did I say all that well enough?
Yeah, but if you were asking the actual person, I don't want to be Paul Newman for who wouldn't want to be Paul Newman. This is right north down the river from us. I live in one town, he lived in the other, but he'd be the perfect person, but that's not reality. What's his life looking like that? No, let's be
Well,
realistic.
my superpower is making things happen that I think of instead of sitting on them for a long time and talking to people and having a good time talking to them. That's what I think is my creativity superpower. So is yours writing? Is it painting? Is it talking? What would be
Writing,
your
writing.
writing?
Yeah, because I can say more with writing. With talking, there comes a limit where the other person doesn't understand. Oh, shut up! I don't want to hear about your books. Like I don't talk about my books. I love to talk about literature. So I realize, I have a very limited audience. In fact, almost have no audience. In fact, you're probably the only audience I've had now, Bonnie, in years. So anyway, so I don't even bother, I don't even go there. But writing, you can write whatever you want, and it's up to them whether they want to read it or not. So
Absolutely
that's why
true.
I want to write.
Absolutely
Got to be
true.
writing because the pen can only say so much. But
You're right. My
they can
novel is still
page you
undone,
can
but
say
it's
whatever you want,
I'm
and
still
they can
working
take
on
it
my
or leave it.
novel. Yep.
They usually leave it.
There you go. I write poetry every day. I'm part of a poetry writing group every day
I
in the
know you're
month of
great.
April.
Yeah,
And
indeed.
I'm
Yeah.
writing on my novel, but I haven't touched it in a while because I have to put the two pieces together, the setting the scene and the action of the almost murder that happens. It's a comedy, satire, almost thriller, and it's a lot of fun and it's unlike I think anything anybody has ever written, I think.
Go that direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
One of my
having
favorite quotes is good artists stick to the genre, but great artists transform it.
ooh,
So
well
you
maybe
transform it, Bonnie.
I think I am. I'll read you a little bit after we're off the air if you have some time. So,
Sure.
third question, this one you want. Your life story as a movie or a TV series. Okay. Choose the director. Is it Francis Ford
Scorsese.
Coppola? Is it James? Wait a minute. Is it James Cameron? Is it a TV show? David E. Kelly? Is it a
Yeah.
procedural? Is it a cop show? Is it a drama, a fantasy, a musical, a romance, a comedy, a time travel, a sci-fi, a thriller? What's the title and who would play you? All
Oh,
of the above.
my book, of course, because it would be any part of the book you could film. Scorsese would be the director, and the best actor would have to be Jack Nicholson, but they have to be able to age. You have to be young, like in Five Easy Pieces, that
Hmm.
look and attitude. He'd have to start out, but of course, my book takes place in the last half of the 20th century. So he's got to go through the aging process. But he comes the closest. Robin Williams would be great for the comedy and the shtick and all that, but he couldn't do some of the angrier tone. He's not convincing as an angry young man. He's too nice. But Jack
So
Nicholson would be
what's the
really
title
nice.
of your life story? What's the title of this movie?
Well, what part they picked? They picked the first part, Portrait of an American Wise Guy. That'd be a perfect movie right there. That in itself would make it.
This is a
When I
this is
first
a
wrote it,
this is a brand new movie. It hasn't happened yet. You get to pick the title. What's the title?
Portrait of an American Wise Guy.
Okay, there you
In
go.
fact, when I first wrote that, I never asked my students to read my stuff back when I was writing, because first I'm going to tell you it's great to get that A plus, But years later, when I realized, okay, I might get somewhat of an objective point of view, because I'd be friends with them. I said, okay, I want to run it by you. What do you think? Of course, they still liked it. And they thought it was great so far. But one guy had a girlfriend. She wanted to go into film. That was her big thing. And she didn't know me. In fact, she loved it so much, she wanted to make it in a movie. So she said, I don't even know you, so I don't have to compliment you. So she said, yeah, she could see it made into a film. And I could too, because it's short, takes place in one summer, in the summer of 65, back when it was just starting, and the guy was tripping out on who knows what. So
Who knows what?
influenced his perception, his narration, and so forth. So yeah, that'd be the one to start with.
Okay.
So,
Well, I think mine would be a TV show, and it would be written and directed by Shonda Rhimes, and it would be very fast moving with a lot of dialogue. And I would want a redhead to play me,
of course,
possibly Reba McEntire, not Bette Midler, and it would have been Maureen O'Hara or one of
that'd be
those
great. Yeah.
redheads, but they're long gone. So, and the title would be either She Works Hard for the Money or On the Radio, one of those. There you go. That would be and
I
it would
like
be
Hard for
a
the Money. That's great.
limited series, eight episodes, and it would be comedy and drama. It would have a little sadness and a lot of laughter and some music and a lot of dancing and singing. What do you think?
Oh, I love it. See, I love the combination of comedy and tragedy. They call it tragicomedy or black
Yep.
comedy. I mean, black ethnic, but black in terms of the dark.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yep.
that's what makes it funny, because unless you have the foreboding, the dark side there, it's never going to be that funny. Matter of fact, Shakespeare capitalized that and always plays all his tragedies use comedy juxtaposed to the tragedy. So you got a breather before the next level of tragedy. So they're so close, they're almost the same.
I agree. I agree.
Mine. I
That's
love
the that's the half laughing, half crying. That's the theatrical
Exactly.
symbol, right? The laughing
Yep.
and the crying at the same time. There you go. Okay. Let's do so. Well, thank you for that. Do you have say what stories you want to share? Because I've got three I'm going to show on the screen. You want to talk about yours?
Yeah, the ones that you see one news, I think for obvious reasons, which I could easily get into, which I get indigestion for every time I eat breakfast, I'm watching the news. So we won't get into that.
Nope, no
Well, I picked
politics.
stuff that has nothing to do with that. I picked, let's see. And I picked these because of my own self-interest, and it reinforces my belief that I'm on the right track, as opposed to way back when I first started. I could have gone to art school and become an abstract expressionist, and that was what was in. Being realistic was out. So anyway, this article I liked. Anticipated art trends, nature focused, portraiture, my favorites, nature focused, and especially portraiture. I love doing portraits of people. I can do both. I can do caricatures, but I love just a solid portrait. I mean, I love it. I mean, I love faces. I just look at faces all day long and examine them. I mean, you'd be disturbed by what I notice in people's faces,
I'm
the
sure.
irregularities. Matter of fact, when I do portraits, I get so accustomed to looking at it, I have to reverse the image to get a fresh
Hmm.
perspective. As a matter of
Mm-hmm.
fact, when I'm doing the last part of my portrait, maybe the last third time wise, I'm looking in the mirror most of the time. In the mirror to see it in reverse. For example, when you see yourself, you see yourself in the mirror. But if you see yourself with two mirrors, all of a sudden you see the way we see you.
Hmm.
So, yes, portraits are my
Interesting.
favorite, and that's why I like this particular article. The second
Okay.
one
Yep.
was the rise of socially conscious comedy, which we can relate to. I love comedians, and I love comedians that are current rather than, and I don't like comedians that are too scripted, but I really, most of them are, regardless of whether they want to give you the impression of like George Carlin, I love, but he's very scripted. Robin Williams is pretty spontaneous, but even if you watch him enough, got
He
his
was scripted.
beats and so forth. Bob Hope, everyone writes his jokes for him anyway, so it's not that funny. Mort Saul back in the 60s and Shelley Berman and all those guys.
Oh,
I
yeah.
love that. So I love socially conscious comedy, especially in this day and age, which I won't get into in terms of politics. But boy, what a field day we got there.
Oh, yeah.
That's a mother load. Okay, and the last one, let's see here. Rise of popularity in the unreliable narrator in literature. Now, if anybody is unreliable, it's my character in my book. You're never quite sure if he's telling you a big whopper or not. In fact, half the time he's telling you, yeah, maybe it wasn't quite that way. He was half high half the time anyway. And then later on, when he gets his life together, he still tends to exaggerate. There's always that temptation when he's almost got the secrets of the universe, but he goes for the laugh because it's far more entertaining, you know? And even when he thinks he's finally got there, he's still talking like Dave Barry. Remember Dave Barry from Miami Herald?
Mm-hmm.
He treats the most serious subjects like Dave Barry. So that's why I like that. Matter of fact, the most unreliable narrator in all of great literature, and I've read them all, believe me, was Tristram Shandy, was ranked number 34 in terms of the greatest books ever written by
Mm-hmm.
one of the most reliable lists out there that goes into 3 or 4 pages explaining why, as opposed to the list. Anybody can list the books, but telling why is another one. And his book starts out as total digression. He never sticks to one point. He never gets to where he starts. It just goes on to different digressions. He didn't get so bad where he talks about, don't even read the next chapter. I'll just give you a summary of it. So, of course, you want to read it now because he told you not to read it. By the time you get to the end of the book, he minds me all over the universe. And he wrote it back in the 1700s. And he is basically the mother of modern literature. James Joyce and all the other people that write in the stream of consciousness can trace it back to him. And it's a very funny novel, which most people can never finish because it's just so distracting. But I did finish it.
Thank you.
It ranks up there with Finnegan's Wake.
There you go. Those were delightful. You want to see my three? I'm going to show
Yeah.
them on the screen. Okay,
Right.
let me do a share here and let's go to desktop and I've got them up here. Do you know where the phrase raise a toast to someone comes from, Jim? Well, now you will. In the Middle Ages, toast had evolved from the Greek origins and it was common in Europe. They had a piece of soaked bread or toast called sop, and they had the English, you probably heard of the wassail bowls, which
Yep.
could have
Muscle
had
blow.
mulled cider or ale, a spiced alcoholic drink. Well, theory suggests that the toast was augmenting the drink's flavor or an accompanying snack, and it either fell in or they dunked it in. It was called a drink topper. And the English parties often honored a guest as the toast of the night, and it went into the verb to toast. So that's where it came from, the wassail bowls with the slices of toast or spiced bread on top, and they were dipping and dunking. So what do you think of that? To toast.
Cool. I like where your
Interesting?
mind goes. We'd be a dangerous combination. We'd
There,
never focus in on any one thing, would we?
here's the
We'd
first.
drive everybody crazy.
There you go. The first portable music player was invented back in 1924, long before the Walkman, long before the iPod. It was called the Mickey. Oh, the Mickey phone was not it. It was invented by a Hungarian siblings named Miklos and Etienne Vadaz. And this Microphone was a portable record player that would fit into your pocket, or if a lady had a
Huh.
purse, it was a turntable, a tone arm with a needle, a circular metal resonator that amplified the sound instead of the horn on the phonographs. You remember those? No power.
Oh,
It had
yeah.
an internal spring drive mechanism that turned the turntable. It folded up into 4 inches by 2 inches thick. That's it. It looked like a miniature gramophone, a pocket watch. That's what it looked like.
Buddy, I've been around for so long. When I was in school, we didn't have all that stuff. We just had one of those old crank things where the teacher had to
Yep.
crank it and it would go too fast or too slow. And it would
Yep.
grab by. We can only play one side. If you drop it, they'll split into 1,000 pieces.
There you
That's
go. There
what I
you go.
remember. I
Well,
recall those things. Yeah.
in 1979, Japan produced and started marketing the Sony Walkman. And those were the songs that would fit. And on the iPod, 1,000 songs would fit. Anyway, when Sony released the portable cassette player, it was called the Soundabout. In the UK, it was called the Stowaway. In Australia, it was called the Freestyle because in Japan, they thought Walkman wasn't right for the Western markets. They wouldn't like that name. So they also called it the Sony Disco Jogger, which I thought was pretty funny coming from the disco world. In Japan, when they released it in 79, they thought We'll sell 500 a month. No big deal. It sold 50,000 in 2 months.
Wow.
And they decided Walkman was the right name for it. And they still have Soundabout ads in the beginning, but they went to Walkman. So that's a little bit of the history of how all of these happened to get
Oh,
together. Spotify, by the way, last year had 675,000 million monthly listeners. So that's how popular portable audio. Now, here's an interesting one I found today. I think you'll appreciate this. In some countries, if you shake your head no, which I'm doing side to side, it actually means yes.
hmm.
One theory is that during the Ottoman rule, Orthodox Bulgarians, this is Bulgaria, would resist the pressure to give up their religion, their faith. So they nodded yes, but it meant no. So that was the
Coded
opposite.
language.
The opposite,
Yeah.
right. So a head shake is a gesture turned left to right across the transverse plane, repeated in quick succession, which will make me dizzy. In many cultures, it says disagreement, denial, rejection, disapproval, upset. So different cultures assign different meanings to the gesture. Shaking no is widespread and appears in a lot of diverse and linguistic groups: Indian subcontinent, Middle East, Africa, East, Southeast Asia, Europe, South America, North America, and Australia. To introduce an approval, indicate an approval, in Bulgaria and southern Albania, it's used for the opposite, meaning no. So here are some of the origins. There are varying theories. Listen to this. Hungry babies looking for mother's milk move their heads side by side, right? If they don't want if they declined, they go side by side. So the theory was it was taken off of how a baby looks for mother's milk. I don't know if that works. In 1872, Charles Darwin wrote about an early survey of head shaking and gestures, and the book was called The Expression of the Emotions in Man and Animals. And he wrote, James, to the missionaries in parts of the world, asking them to give him information on local gestures. And he concluded that shaking the head for no, side by side, was in fact common to many, many different groups.
Hmm.
So in this Wikipedia lookup, I saw an article and then I went and looked it up. Friendly gestures today include the air kiss, mwah, applause, the biker wave, the cheek kiss, the elbow bump, the Eskimo kiss. I think that's with the nose, the finger heart, the fist bump, the forehead kiss, a high five, up kiss, namaste, a pinky swear, a pound hug, or a thumbs up signal. Respect could be a curtsy, a fist palm, genuflect, of course, that's religious, hand kiss and hat tip. And celebratory could be applause, crossed hands, fist pump, high five, low five, or victory clasp. And that's the end of that story. So what'd you think? Pretty interesting?
Great. Where do you get this stuff?
I
What
receive a
possessed
lot.
you to even look for it in the first place?
I receive a lot of newsletters, some of them technical, some
Okay.
of them, and I get them every
Yeah.
day. And I skim the headlines in these newsletters. They come from all kinds of organizations. And if I see something interesting, I'll click on the link and I'll
Oh,
go and
okay.
I'll take it, put it into a folder. I've got about 100 articles so far, and I put them into my We Dish Wacky Stories
You're
folder.
a glutton for punishment. They send them to
I,
you.
I,
Okay. Well, you
I
asked for it.
am. So we're just about out of time. And so I have enjoyed so much getting to know
Yeah.
you. When you were on
Well,
my other show, I got to know you in little 3-minute sound bites, but today I really got to know you. Do you have any advice or suggestions for a young person who wants to be a cool dude in their life like you?
be themselves.
Okay.
Really. I mean, don't fake it. It
Fake
can
it till you
become
don't
cool.
fake it till you make it,
It
or
can
do
be,
fake it till you
no,
make it.
no, don't fake it. No.
Just be.
Yeah, really.
Just be. And what about getting into art and literature and writing and all the things you've done? Is there a clue? Should they take an art class? Should they read
No,
certain
no,
books?
okay, you see my art, right? Well,
Yep.
I never took an art course in my life.
Okay.
Period. It was just natural. I mean, it's just part of my DNA. I mean, from
Just
my early memories, I wanted to create.
just do.
I mean, specific. I don't mean just, I wanted to draw, I wanted to tell stories. Uh, I hone in on certain words, the way things are said, certain lines in movies, anything that are funny or a certain scene or a certain look. Uh, I have to create, period.
Yep. Creativity. A force of life for many of us, right? We create something. We just have to. Doesn't matter what it is, just create. Create your life. No
Yeah.
handbook. There's no handbook. Just do it.
Even ourselves, we're a statement, we're a work of art.
Jim, It's been absolutely delicious getting to
Great.
know you. I want to thank again your ladies, Lizette and Allie, for being there for you and with
Yeah,
you,
too bad they weren't in the screen. They would have to
and
put the
thank you
biopsy
to
mug.
Grace for reintroducing us. And I'm going to play the closing music. Let me make sure all my buttons are up here, and we're going to dance a little bit once I raise the audio, and then we will, and then stick around and we'll talk afterwards. So
Okay,
here we go. So you want to be, show me those moves.
So you wanna be
I gotta get up.
a cool kid.
Oh, that's good.
Hanging with the ink and set. Looking real.
Looking real. Cool and fine. Casting your net. Here we go. Bop, 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 bop. Thank you again to Serge Hoffman for writing the music and singing the lyrics to my song. And thank you to Jim. Is it Mueller or Mueller? How do you like to pronounce it?
Mueller. I gave up on Mueller because everyone said Mueller. I said, okay, fine, whatever.
Jim Mueller, it's been delicious. Hold on, don't go anywhere. We're going to wave goodbye to LinkedIn, wave goodbye to